Folks, as you know, social media censorship is growing. The best way to support our video work for Israel is to subscribe to our video newsletter on pulseofisrael.com and to share our videos. If you are already a subscriber, then thank you. Shalom everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in our eternal and ancestral homeland, the land of Israel, in our eternal and undivided capital, Jerusalem. Today, a very, very special guest, Len Khodorkovsky.
Right on.
All right, I was afraid I was going to miss that. I had the privilege of meeting Len in the State Department back in Washington, D.C. A few years ago when the world was more sane in so many ways. And definitely the relationship between Israel and the United States of America and the Trump administration was on the right path for a better, more safe world for all of the freedom-loving world. I think you can agree with me, right, Len?
Absolutely.
And I had the opportunity of meeting him then, talking to him about what was going on with the Trump administration regarding Israel, the Middle East. And here is Len in Jerusalem today. So it is a fabulous opportunity to have to be able to speak with you, Len. Shalom.
Love being here. I'm so happy to see you in your backyard. It's actually much nicer than the State Department cafeteria.
That's right. That's where we sat last time. So let's get right into it. Do you appreciate the historic time period you worked in Washington, D.C. for America and for Israel?
Of course. Would not trade it for the world. It was a special time. A lot of credit goes to President Trump. A lot of credit goes to Secretary Pompeo on being visionary on the issues that we got elected on. And that's a very important note for everybody to understand. The American people elected President Trump on a pro-Israel agenda, on an agenda that sees America as an exceptional country that it is, and frankly, President Trump wasn't mincing words when he ran, and he was very strongly pro-Israel. He was anti-Iran. He had strong words to say about China, and the thing that made him different than most people who run for president is he actually followed through on the policies that he ran on. So yeah, and on one hand, I'm proud to be associated with somebody that said what he meant and helped him realize the policy that he ran on. Of course, we couldn't foresee a lot of the things that we ended up accomplishing, Abraham Accords being one of them, but we did work toward that goal, and I'm so thrilled that we were able to bring a few of these deals across the finish line before the people had other ideas.
So I have so many questions to ask, so little time, so it won't get through everything. So I want to start from the end, in a sense, by asking the following. How hard or frustrating was it to try to get through and push through the actual agenda that the Trump administration wanted to accomplish while in power? Even though, again, understand you were working, you were an official in the administration, in the State Department. Did everything happen easily, or was there a lot of internal challenges?
There are always challenges. When you're a political administration, any political administration that comes into office, you're a minority in Washington. The majority of people embedded in a government apparatus are permanent employees. They're foreign service officials or career service officials. So they're a pure permanent bureaucracy. And that doesn't even take into consideration the press and all of the people that surround the Beltway that make the gears of Washington work. So yeah, of course it was challenging. It's doubly challenging when you're a Republican administration, because whether your viewers know or not, about 9 out of 10 people who live and work around Washington are Democrats. So I worked on Iran policy for about a couple of years, and the people that worked in the Trump administration on Iran policy just a year or two before worked on JCPOA. So of course it was challenging to work with people on the inside. Look, I mean, it's one of the keys in getting policy through in Washington is not being afraid to challenge the status quo. President Trump and Secretary Pompeo and a lot of people that I work with were certainly not afraid to challenge the system and the status quo and push the envelope on a lot of issues. And once you solve that riddle of not being afraid of the bureaucracy, you can get a lot of things done. Because after all, you know that you're in Washington for a finite period of time. The people elected you to get certain things done. You don't have all the time in the world, so you may as well use the time you have to see the vision that you ran on through. And luckily, we were able to, work through the challenges. I have to say, there are plenty of responsible, professional people in the federal government that are there just to execute on policy. So, it's not like all or nothing, but definitely challenging to get things that are not part of the conventional wisdom through the system. Because you have to convince people that just because we've done these things for 70 years in Israel's case, doesn't mean that there's another way, that there isn't another way. And of course, convincing people that there might be another way takes some time when you don't have a whole lot of time.
Right. So, again, starting from the end, can you give us a laundry list of those policies, plans that you are happy they were able to accomplish, and those things that just were not, you feel disappointed they weren't able to get done?
Well, you only have a certain amount of time. You walk in the door knowing that you're not going to be able to accomplish everything you want. And you also know that things happen. So you have to react in real time.
For sure.
But having said that, I can tell you, because I worked a little bit on President Trump's election campaign before he took office. And we had what we call the contract with the American voter. And on that contract with the American voter, we spelled out the types of things that we're going to be working on, and the voters could hold us accountable at the end. I can't tell you that we accomplished every single bullet point on that contract, but we certainly did quite well because we focused like a laser beam on those things that we promised. So what are we proud of? There's a lot to be proud of, frankly. Well, let's start backwards. Abraham Accords, 4 peace agreements in a span of a few months. That's unprecedented. Nobody could predict that that would become reality, for sure. And
a true game changer for the Middle East, because a totally change in paradigm of relations.
No question.
Different than the peace deals with Egypt and Jordan, which are cold peace, not between peoples, but just between governments.
Absolutely, no question about that. And the paradigm shift is actually something that we did consciously try to work on through the entire administration. Not really knowing that what we're going to end up with Abraham Accords, but we did want to change the framework of how the conversation about the Middle East took place. That, of course, the most obvious difference is that before the Trump administration, peace in the Middle East had to run through the Palestinian
the creation of a Palestinian state.
Exactly. So 2-state solution, right? That's the
no
paradigm.
Peace in the Middle East unless there's a creation of a Palestinian state.
And what we decided is we're not going to allow the Palestinian leadership to dictate what peace in the Middle East looks like.
Right.
Now, the way that worked is, again, President Trump said when he ran that he's going to rip up the Iran deal. So in many ways, our policy on Iran, because he did end up ripping up the Iran deal and instituting probably the most historic pressure campaign on the world's top state sponsor of terrorism. And this is not just the political guy saying that. The State Department itself has declared the Iranian regime since 1984, I believe, as a government sponsor of terrorism. So they're the reigning champ, for almost 40 years. So we decided that, unlike the Obama administration, which thought that they could solve the Middle East by anchoring its policy to making nice with Iran, we knew that also that in order to make peace in the Middle East, we had to solve the Iran issue. So we worked on Iran. We took us out of the ridiculous deal that did not guarantee that Iran would not attain a nuclear weapon in the end, which threw billions and billions of dollars at the world's top state sponsor of terrorism, which continued to attack our interests, continued to attack Israel or other allies in the region, develop missiles, assassinate people around the globe. So it didn't really make sense to us. And in a way, working on the Iran policy and pivoting back to our relationships, our traditional friendships in the region, If you recall, President Trump's first trip was to Saudi Arabia and Israel. And so that was a big signal saying that, you know what, let's go back to the basics. Our values and our interests align more with our traditional allies than they do with Iran. And we began to rebuild trust with our friends here in the region, Israel, the Gulf Arab states. And through the trust that was built on all of us working on the Iran issue, I think all of those countries started to see each other as potential partners. So in the beginning, it was security issues that were things that they had in common. But slowly, they started to see other possibilities, business possibilities, cultural possibilities, religious possibilities. The whole Abrahamic origin of both Arabs and Jews became to take root through many meetings that originally started on the Iran issue. Right. And eventually, I think people kind of realized that there's more that Israelis and Gulf Arabs have in common than they do different. I have to tell you, there are two anecdotes which I think would be interesting. I remember talking about the possibilities of peace here in the Middle East with a Arab diplomat at some point during the administration. And he said, if you asked me 5 years ago, what is the biggest destabilizing force in the region for us, the Arabs, I would say the I word, Israel. They wouldn't even pronounce Israel. Mm. But if you ask me today, what is the biggest problem in the Middle East? It's also the I word. It's Iran. And so we kind of were able to break through a lot of the taboo topics because Iran was obviously the common thread, the common, the predominantly top issue for both Israel and its Arab neighbors. And I think that led to productive conversations that ended up in being actually peace agreements.
Since you brought this up, we'll stick on it. Are you worried that the accomplishments you were able to make as part of the Trump administration and the State Department are now being walked back and will go back to where it was or even worse?
Yeah, there's some concern about the posturing that the Biden administration is doing publicly. For a while they wouldn't even say the words Abraham Accords. They finally have, and that's because of public pressure. But I really think that the success of those policies is in the hands of Israel, is in the hands of the Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, Morocco, all of the people here in the region, dare I say Saudi Arabia, all of the people here in the region that have the most at stake. So it's not up to the Biden administration or anybody else to decide if the Abraham Accords stick or not. It's up to the people here. So yeah, it would be nice if the Biden administration picked up where we left off and was working toward bringing other countries along and perhaps getting them across the finish line. I hope they do that. Secretary Blinken has said that they're going to build on those things. But we'll see. Their actions will speak louder than words. And for me and folks like me, we're certainly going to hold them accountable from the outside.
Listen, one of the most worrying things showing that their actions are not following their words was one of the first decisions made with the Biden administration, where it shut down, and forgive me if I'm not using the correct terminology or the right numbers, the Special Abraham Accords Fund, which I think out of $10 billion, looks like a huge fund that was set up specifically to help fund joint projects between the countries that made the deals between Israel and those Sunni Muslim countries. And they shut that down, that fund. So, and again, I don't know how people don't see the hypocrisy. Here you have an administration, the left, the Democrats, who preach peace. Well, you can't say more about trying to achieve peace in the Middle East than putting up $10 billion to achieve peaceful relations and joint projects between what used to be enemy states, between Israel and the Sunni Muslim countries. So the question is, isn't that sign enough of the direction that the Biden administration is going? And it's not necessarily interested in peace, but in cozying back up with Iran, stopping the peaceful normalization agreements with the Sunni Muslim countries, and returning to the whole everything has to go through a creation of Palestine state for the future of the Middle East.
I think philosophically they are where you described they are. They believe that the last 4 years were an anomaly in how to achieve peace in the Middle East. of course, it flies in the face of reality, what's actually taking place. But I believe that, that they do think of the two-state solution as being the anchor of Middle East policy.
Even though it's been proven a fallacy.
I dare I say it might be kind of a religious belief in that philosophy. So I think they're trying to reverse time by going back into JCPOA. They're trying to undo things that we've done that seem to challenge the conventional wisdom of what they've been doing for many decades. And I wouldn't say they're doing it nefariously. I think they really believe that their way is the best way to achieve peace. And of course, from an American perspective, our national security has to come first. And this is the way I kind of see that they're probably looking at the issue. So they see the JCPOA deal as, and they keep repeating the same words, as permanently and verifiably blocks all paths to a nuclear weapon for Iran. It does not. It's not a treaty. We know that.
Right.
It's not. Some of the sunsets have already begun. Sunsets in the agreement, meaning the expiration of the types of sanctions that were put in place as part of the agreement. So Iran today can buy and sell weapons to China or Russia. Serious, sophisticated weapons like tanks, jets, helicopters. I mean, we're talking about dangerous, deadly weapons. That's part of the deal. They're allowed to do that as part of the deal. In a couple of years, another sunset will expire. By year 2030, according to this deal, all of the sunsets will expire, and Iran will legally be able to pursue a nuclear weapon. And of course, that's not acceptable. So, but the administration really believes that the deal solves that, and in the name of diplomacy, at least the perception of diplomacy, they have persuaded themselves and the Europeans that that is the best way forward to protect American national security. We, of course, disagree strenuously on that. We don't think that's appropriate or protects American national security. I've written a number of articles on this issue. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but it is what it is. So there's some things you can do on the inside of government, some things you can do on the outside of government, and we'll do what we have to do to keep pressure on them to do the right thing for not just Israel, but America's national security and the national security of our allies here.
Right. So let's move on from Iran. I know you were very involved specifically in Iran, and you continue to be involved in Iran. So if we have time, we'll go into that. But the other major policy that did not move forward, even though it was worked on, was the Trump deal of the century and sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, parts of Judea and Samaria, etc. Any feelings of disappointment in how things ended up on that front?
Well, yeah, of course.
And again, just a caveat. We sat down and we were talking about this, and I remember, and one of the things he's telling me, Avi, there are good things. You're not totally going to like it, but there's some good things. And I'm like, no, I'm on board. I totally accept that. So let's go.
So yeah, obviously there's no perfect deal for everybody. We did put in a good faith effort in trying to, again, think outside the box, outside of what has been done over the last 70 years, and trying to broker some sort of normalcy, some sort of peace and prosperity between Israel and the Palestinians. So what that looked like, is an imperfect product, and we looked at as a beginning of a conversation. But we actually did break down things beyond just kind of 50,000-foot view look at the deal. We broke things down based on specific projects that could be initiated on day one if both parties came to a deal. And not just Israelis and Palestinians, Israelis and Egyptians, Jordanians, the people in the region, things that would benefit the region. There were actually $50 billion worth of specific projects that we put on the table to be able to start a conversation. If only the Palestinian leadership would say yes to a deal. They haven't done that. We know they haven't done that. That's why others term this the deal of the century, because it's been so hard to attain. And in the end, you can't have a deal where one of the parties isn't interested in the deal. So am I frustrated? I'm not frustrated that we put in a good faith effort in trying to bring about a better, more peaceful, more prosperous future for the people in this region. I'm certainly not frustrated by that. I'm proud of the work, and I'm proud of the team that worked on these specific issues. A lot of smart people, a lot of people of good faith who care about Israel, actually, have tried to change the paradigm and what it's been, and to actually think differently and bring about a better product. Now, there's only so much you can do from the United States. People on the ground have to accept and start talking and implement the plan. It's one thing to have a plan; it's another thing to execute on the plan. We can't do that for anybody. So, yeah, I think it would have been better for the Palestinians, frankly, if they accepted the good deal that it was, at least to start talking about positive solutions. They certainly would have gotten the benefit of a lot of financial aid, not just from the United States, but from its Arab neighbors and Israel as well. And that would have been better for the Palestinian people. Unfortunately, the old adage still stands. Palestinians haven't missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
That's right.
That's unfortunate for the Palestinian people, but I don't regret trying. And I think the hard work, the details of what we put together are still there. Hopefully, someone somewhere down the road will pick up on where we left off, and we're gonna, hopefully try and solve this at one point. But we can't solve it for the people. The people have to do it themselves.
I like to say you can't help those who don't want to help themselves. So moving on from that deal of the century, which again, I think I remember sitting there and telling you, it's Arabs are going to say no.
Well, you were wrong in some extent, because a lot of Arabs did say yes. It's the Palestinians that said no.
The Palestinian Arab leadership was going to say no. Let me clarify. Yes, 100%. Because again, what the Abraham Accords proved is that to many of the Arab countries, especially the Sunni Arab Muslim countries, the Palestinian Arab issue is a thorn in the side that's stopping them from moving forward. So yeah, they want to be able to move forward with Israel. And it's the Palestinian Arabs themselves that continue this issue and never want to end it.
Yeah, the Palestinian leadership, unfortunately, has got the Palestinian people stuck in time. And, I can't tell you at what point the Palestinian people will decide that their leadership doesn't represent them, or they want something different. Certainly, Hamas is not interested in a two-state solution even. So I don't know what deal there is to make with Hamas. I think the way to solve Hamas is to solve Iran. That's who provides them with rockets. That's who funds them. That's who, as a matter of fact, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, all of these actors, they're all connected to Iran. So in many ways, peace in the Middle East has to go through Iran. And that is, as you said, that is something that I worked on. That is something I continue to work on, because I truly believe that is the game changer here in the region. Once the regime in Iran can no longer fund its terrorist proxies,
that's the first bowling pin that has to be hit down.
I think so. And maximum pressure did a lot to diminish its power in the region. We tracked their money during the Trump administration. You had Hezbollah fighters that had tzedakah boxes in grocery stores, begging for money from people because their money was drying up. You had fighters in Syria that were saying, this is not the same Iran of a couple of years ago, because they couldn't afford to pay their fighters in Syria. So it was working. I think it would have been good. Look, the regime, I think, won the lottery when the Trump administration did not get a second term. That is the only card they had left to play. If the Trump administration stayed in office.
And John Kerry was telling them all along, don't play along, because we're going to be back.
Unfortunately.
Behind the back.
He didn't know that they're going to be back, but there's no question that he was whispering in Zarif's ear.
Right. I know we have to end. A final question. Oh, just one little caveat there. I believe Iran has to be the first bowling pin to fall down to be able to change the Middle East. 100%. I still don't believe the two-state solution is ever going to work, but we will be able to have peaceful relations with our Palestinian Arab neighbors. That's just the only caveat I have on that. But the final question I want to ask you: do you have any insight to us on what happened the night of the rollout of the recognition of the U.S. recognition of Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, where, from what we've heard, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thought he was going to leave there and be able to already apply sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, and then all of a sudden, throughout the night, things changed, and there was pressure, and it was pushed off a number of months, and then it never happens. Any insight into what was going on there?
I can't tell you what happened that night, but I can tell you that our thinking was along the lines of a long-term solution to the issues here in the region. So we're playing the long game. And one of the things that we were tracking is, yes, this is one of the issues, obviously, that Bibi Netanyahu ran on here during the election. We knew that's what he wanted. But we also knew that we were working on paradigm-shifting deals that ended up being the Abraham Accords. And the
Which he didn't know at that time, supposedly.
Well, I can't tell you what he knew, what he didn't know.
Okay.
But the bottom line is that we had a number of projects that we were working on, and we thought that in the long term that the issue of Judea and Samaria is going to be solved probably, somewhere down the line in terms of along the lines of what President Bush sent a letter to Aric Sharon at some point, kind of outlining the framework of what eventually will probably be the trade-off for Israel. So yes, Israel will get to keep some of the some of the large settlements in Judea and Samaria. There'll probably be some sort of a real estate trade-off for the Palestinians. That was probably going to end up the way we solve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, but we also knew we didn't want to sabotage what we had
Abraham
going
Accords
with the other Muslim countries.
Got it. So there was the fear that if moving forward with recognizing sovereignty of areas of Judea and Samaria would neuter the Abraham Accords.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, you don't have to listen to me. The Emiratis have said that's the primary reason why they decided to act on the Abraham Accords, is because they were concerned that Judea and Samaria will become annexed, or
the biggest question mark was, because I remember at that ceremony, the joint press conference between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump, there were representatives of the Sunni Muslim countries there. So there was, in a sense, some feeling like, oh, they are on board with it in one way, shape, or form because they're witnessing the actual ceremony. But obviously, there's behind the scenes.
Yeah, and look, it's a complicated issue for the United States. Plus, the United States is becoming more and more, split on the issue of Israel. Unfortunately, for a long time we were able to say Israel is a bipartisan issue, and we still hope, and I think it's in the best interest of the United States and Israel that Israel stays a bipartisan issue. I am sad to report to you that unfortunately, it is becoming less and less a bipartisan issue. You have a distinct portion of the Democratic Party that is not looking at Israel as an ally. They're looking at Israel as an oppressor, as part of their, kind of the matrix of victimization of minorities. They commingle the BLM issue, the Black Lives Matter issue, with the issue of Israel and Palestine. You'll see plenty of banners saying "Free Palestine" at BLM rallies. That is unfortunately becoming the driving force in a lot of Democratic politics. So even President Biden or Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi, I can tell you that they right now represent the driving political force in their own party. And that's unfortunate. There are still Democrats who view Israel as a core ally and are doing their best to keep the extremists in their party in check, but that is a worrisome sign going forward.
Len, you have to go. You have another interview coming up. There are plenty of questions I still want to ask you about. Love to continue the conversation, to be able to delve into all the insights you have. So hopefully another time.
Of course.
In the meantime, one, thank you so much for all the work you did during those 4 years. Truly historic. I'm a big believer that, again, things take time, like you know as well. And even if things are going a little backwards, the time will come where things are going to move forward. Again, it could be my religious faith background. Things are going to move forward, and you were a huge step in moving things forward for the benefit of the whole freedom-loving world, not just Israel and America. So thank you very much, and good luck on everything you're working on now, which we'll have to talk about another time.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Signing off for another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in our eternal and ancestral homeland. I hope you really enjoyed this. Please share this video. Fabulous insight. Signing off. Shalom from the Holy Land of Israel.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.